Exhale. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you. Hi. So, I've been practicing what I'm going to tell you for the last 6 months. every day when I take a shower in Buenos Aires, where I live part of the year. Every day I practiced what to tell you today. And in truth, what I'm going to tell you has to do with everything that you have probably done in the past. You probably are healers or have taken classes to heal yourselves. You've taken different things to help your consciousness become one. But we are at a time when, in order to do that, we have to let go of anything that we still are holding, that is retaining us and holding us onto the past. And the very first thing that we have to heal are our personal relationships. Before I tell you what Morphogenetic Field Healing Therapy is, I will tell you how I came to doing what I do. I will give you a short synopsis, but in 1986 I took a trip to Argentina. I was living in New York. I had studied but didn't finish political sciences because I wanted to help the world. And I realized I couldn't do it. That wasn't the way I could help the world, but I had no idea how I could do that. How could I help people? So I just, I was an interpreter. I worked for the government for a while, then I worked privately. Until one day I decided to leave the government and traveled back to Argentina, where I spent most of my living years. From when I was 2.5, I was born in Los Angeles. She's my cousin. She's 3 months older than I am, and we spent our first 2.5 years together in Los Angeles. And then my mom is Argentinian and my dad is from the States, but he also grew up in Argentina. He went there when he was 7. So after I was born, my dad was very ill, and they decided to go back to Argentina, where my mother's parents were. So I stayed there for a while until I was 15, and then I came back here, and then I went to Europe, and I lived there, where I studied. I began studying in Milan. I began studying political sciences. Then I moved to New York. I continued studying political sciences in Columbia University. And when I gave up that, I realized I needed some help, and I went and I studied art, because I thought, well, there's something missing in my life. Although I did come from a family of people that were searchers, that were seekers, and my grandmother, our grandmother, was a theosophist. I had learned how to meditate. I was initiated in transcendental meditation along with my sisters who are younger than I am when I was 8.5. So it isn't that I did not have a spiritual upbringing. I did. My parents were very spiritual. Yet there was still something missing, and I really didn't know what. So when I was 28, I traveled to Buenos Aires after living in New York for about 12 years, and I had a spiritual experience. That was the first spiritual experience that I could actually remember. I went to the mountains, and I was taken to see lights, and I had an experience of understanding and at the same time knowing that didn't have an explanation or words for many years. I just knew that I had to leave the States and go back to Argentina, where I opened a retreat, a holistic retreat, where I invited people to follow a lacto-vegetarian diet and do meditation and whatever we could find around there. Argentina was not the place that I knew the most, because I had grown up in Europe and in the States for the later years of my life. And that experience in Argentina changed me completely. I'm still finding out how is that still impacting in my life, but I went back to New York City and I decided to just sell everything I had, which was not very much, a drawing table and a nice chair. And I asked my parents to help me because I felt that I had to open a retreat center, which I did. I went back to Argentina. I went to the mountains of Cordoba, which is where I live now, where I had that experience. And we founded with my family a holistic retreat. Argentina is a very interesting country because people are open to changing their minds always, like their governments, like the economy. You have to adjust to living with money that one day has a certain value and the next day has no value, and so you're continuously adjusting. So there are a group of people that are very interesting because of that permanent activity that happens in their mind. They have to constantly change their minds about things being stable. That was a great lesson for me because we moved there, and after a year we had no more money because we didn't know how to manage ourselves there. Luckily I have parents that are very understanding, and although not wealthy, were able to give us a hand to continue there. And it was in Argentina that I decided to become a sponsor for people that came from the States to teach us things. And so I at one point brought two women from Chicago, Elena Lieberman and Ronnie Reisler, who taught us how to read the Akashic Records. That's in 1995. I brought Sandra Ray, who taught us how to do rebirthing. I don't know if you've heard about that. Mm-hmm. And then I brought Giselle King and Catherine Anderson, who taught us how to do magnified healing. It's a healing technique that I understand was pretty popular a few years ago here in Colorado, because I just spoke to Giselle King last night, and she told me, oh yeah, it used to be very popular, but I don't know what happened. And then I also sponsored a Filipino healer who taught us many things, including psychic surgery, emotional healing, mental healing, all sorts of things. And that man married one of my sisters, my middle sister. Only that he passed away after giving birth to his first and only child. So we were left without his help, his spiritual help, I guess. And we had to continue. So we had the retreat center, we had all of these things that we had begun doing. And the thing that really caught my attention, I'm a person that likes to understand the psyche. I like to understand the psychological components of our mind and the reasons why we do the things that we do. Beyond the spiritual. Spiritual, I think, is what I am, and the other parts are the parts that I live in my third dimensional world. And if I can understand that, then I can fulfill the law that says, know thyself. And so I began an active life of consulting and teaching how to read the Akashic Records. And I had been taught in a certain way where I could go back to the past and see things that had to do with the past lives. Yet I did not feel comfortable with that way of helping people. I felt that I needed to go beyond that, because I felt that past lives gave me a lot of information. I could help people, but I felt that people would go back home and still needed something else. Then I began having the experience of perceiving that I was getting the images that gave answers to people when they asked about their past lives, yet something was not complete. And I began feeling that I had to go deeply or deeper into the areas of the mind that we call patterns, emotional patterns and mental patterns. And so that came along with an impulse to look deeply into where was this pattern coming from. Was it coming from this person's life now, with the things that happened around that person, or was this coming from their relatives? And I began having information that told me that a certain pattern a certain way of feeling and thinking came from their grandparents or their great-great-grandparents. And so one day I had a person come to see me, a psychologist, who asked me certain things, and I said, well, this has to do with something that is connected to your grandmother. Is she alive? Oh, no, she's not. And where is she coming from? Well, she came from Russia or from Germany. She was Jewish. And suddenly a whole bunch of information came up, and this lady was completely surprised because she told me after 21 years of doing psychoanalysis, I've never been able to go so deep and understand why I've been feeling like this all of my life. Back then I only worked with the release of those patterns, surrendering the patterns to grace with prayers that I had learned from my teachers in the school that I was a member of, which is the Akashic Record Consultants International, which is here in the States. When I became a teacher for that school, I also felt that there were certain ways of seeing things that didn't go along with my way of perceiving things. I always want to go deeper. I don't want to just be on the surface of things. I want to understand why something is really stopping me, and it's not allowing me to feel completely whole and complete. And so I formed my own school in Argentina to teach how to read the Akashic Records. However, when this lady came to my appointment and said that what we had done had solved a problem that had been taking place in her life for like 21 years, and she asked me if I was a family constellator. I said I had no idea of what she was talking about because I had never heard that. So she said, oh, never mind. In any case, you've solved my problem. And so then I had a student that told me that she was studying to be a family constellator. So that was like the second time that this new word came to me, or new words came to me, and I thought, well, I have to explore it. And so I found out that a German psychologist and theologian had created this system which is called family constellations, which allows us to see what has happened with our ancestry and to solve the things that we carry on for our parents, grandparents, great-great-grandparents. And I began attending every workshop that I could, and when Bert Hellinger, who's the creator, came to Argentina, of course I went to take the class with him, and then with Gunther Weber, who's a disciple of his, but also an eminence in Europe, and so forth and so on. And then I began my own formation as a family constellator. But I decided that I did not want to complete that because I felt that the work that I was doing did not require all of the, if I, on one side I have all of the knowledge and understanding of what it means when you're standing in a family and you don't know why you are in that family, and you ask yourself, why is it that I was born into this family? I'm so different from them. A question and something that has been stated over and over again in many of the consultations that I gave before. And Bert Hellinger has taught us, or given us the information that is really the educated information, the information that you would learn when you train as a psychologist. That's what he teaches when he teaches. I loved what he taught, but I felt that the work that I was doing was sort of collapsed even more whatever was going on for a person. In other words, I did not need to be so detailed as a constellator would be in a constellation, because Spirit shows me a way to cut through that. In fact, when we use some healing words which are used in family constellations, when I do the Morphogenetic Field Healing Therapy, things seem to not just collapse in times of term because of your understanding, but also I seem to be able to work with more levels. In a regular constellation, you see an area of your life that is perhaps obstacled by your emotions or your thoughts. And in the work that I do, I can go to different levels. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask a few of you to help me out so that I can show you first what a family constellation would look like by having a representation of my own family. I will show you what my family is like so that you understand what my work entails when I do it. My work does not require for a group of people to be present. I do it individually, and we visualize everything in our minds. I don't need to have a group of people. However, I'm going to show you what a constellation would look like so that you understand what is it that we're looking for when we are doing the morphogenetic field healing therapy. So, in my family, we are a father. May I? May I take here, a father. I'll put you here. And let's see who wants to be my mother. And a mother. Here, we're going to be a little tight here, so we will just do. No, just stay because we don't have enough space. And we're going to have a daughter, the oldest one, this is me, and the middle one. We have 3 daughters, okay? And then we have excuse me, sorry. Yes, no problem. No worries. Like the way Carrie says that. No worries. And a little sister. Sure.
Try it out.
As we said before, it's a small space, but our heart is very large. Okay, so father, mother, and children. Okay, in my family, my parents got divorced, and my father left. So my mother was very troubled. She was in pain. She did not feel good about being left with 3 kids. So she didn't tell me personally, please, Gabriela, help me out with your sisters. She just simply said, without saying it, I need you. And I said, Mom, I'm going to do everything for you because I love you so much. I love you to pieces that I'll even give my life for you. So I did this. I took my father's place. Okay? So she thought she could be the oldest one. See how she stepped right next to my mother? But I was the one representing my dad. So when I was growing up, I wasn't able to have good relationships because I could not see myself as my mother's daughter. I was I still am. I am a person that has willpower. I used to be very aggressive, and I was I'm not going to say go-getter, but I was very strong-willed to do things. Say it again? Backbone. Okay, right, okay. And so that created problems because when I met men, I'm going to ask you to please help me. Men didn't stand to my right so that I could be the woman and he could be the man. Men would be placed here. So that I could take care of him, which meant that I ended up not liking them. I got tired of men that were weak, though I chose them, because that is how I perceived my father, being that I had seen what my mother had done for all of us. Okay, so that created a lot of problems along my life. When I started to see all of this, my relationship with my dad was horrible. I was already, I'm not going to tell you my age, but I was a little younger, but not that young. And every time I met with my dad, I felt completely, I don't know if the word is distraught. I was like, anything that he said just hurt me. Didn't matter what he said, I was in terrible pain. And I also felt that he wasn't talking to me. He was like talking to somebody that was not me, the daughter. He was talking to a friend or to another young lady, but not the daughter. So I had to go. What I did was I went to a constellation to try to resolve this because I was already pretty old and I was in a lot of pain. In fact, he moved to my town where I was living in the mountains. He had moved from Miami to live in the area where I lived. He married another woman who was younger than I was. And I hated that he moved to my town because now I had to deal with my feelings. The feelings were so extreme that I wanted to die, actually. Okay? When I realized that I was occupying the wrong place, I'm going to give you yours. Yeah, thank you. Okay? And I was able to, okay, this is what happens. When you take the role of the father, or you take a role that is not yours, in this case, a child feels above the mother or the father. Let's say, if my mother had died and instead I had my father would have said, now you help me. And I would have, of course, very lovingly done that, because I love my parents. We all love our parents. But in our lives, we all have situations with our parents because we are not occupying the rightful place. We're not occupying the role of the daughter or the son. We're trying to do something else. We don't understand what. Sometimes we don't know the real reasons, right? I'm just giving you an example, but sometimes the reasons don't even have to do with our parents. It's with the perception that we have of the things that happened. And now I'm going to have a grandfather. I'm going to choose somebody else. Well, you want to be the grandfather again? Here, you be the grandfather.
Oh, sure. Pick on the whole guy. You were believable as a father.
Okay, and then please stand behind her. She's my mother. Okay, and now let's get a grandmother. Wants to be grandmother? Sure. Okay, and you stand behind Susan. Okay, here, you stand behind. So, our mother and our father stands behind us because they come before us. There's a hierarchy. They came before us because they gave us our life. Therefore, we owe them our life. And that makes us feel very guilty. All of our lives, we feel very guilty, especially if we don't have children or something to which we can give our love. Okay? And so, when a daughter is placed in this role, or life places her in this role, she feels much bigger than her mother because she now takes care of her mother and she decides for her. And she has arguments and she hates her mother, though she can't leave her because she's been put in that place. So, when we can recognize the order, we can say, stand here. Turn it. No, look at her, look at her. Okay. When she can look at her mother and say, thank you for the life that you have given me. And in turn, we realize, in turn, the mother can accept that, let's turn her around. She has taken her life from her mother or from her father. The daughter, turn around again. The daughter now can become truly the daughter. She can remember that she's the daughter. Who was the father before? We're going to bring the father here. She can feel that she's supported by both her parents. Mother and father, I'm going to put your hand behind her. Mother and father are reminding her that this is her rightful place because they gave her her life. And no matter what she does, she's never going to be able to, let me just look for my word, to supersede or to be more than her parents. No matter what she does, she's still the daughter. So many children, out of love, sacrifice themselves to try to help their parents, yet they can never help them the way they would have liked to, because they are the children, they are the parents. They are the parents, and those are the grandchildren. There is an order. So the order of love is lost when I am not occupying my rightful place in my family. And that creates a lot of suffering because that impacts in all of my relationships with my children, with my coworkers. That impacts in the way I perceive money, in the way I feel that I can have it or not have it. Right? Yes, she says yes. You know that, huh? Okay, does this sound familiar to you? Does it ring a bell? Does it perhaps fall into the possibilities of the things that you have not resolved in your own lives? Because we all know a lot of things, right? But when we do this work, in my case, I don't do this work with people. I don't call Sebastian, please call 5 volunteers to be the mother and father. We do it in our minds. We visualize the family, and I'm guided by spirit. And spirit, your spirit and my spirit are one. There's no separation here. So I simply enter into the morphic field. If you want to, you can all sit down so that I can explain this part. Thank you. Thank you, grandfather. In a minute, I'll answer every question you have. I've got it in mind. So I use the word morphic field because I had been using the word Akashic field for a long time, but I had read Ervin Laszlo, I don't know if you've heard of him, who wrote a book called The A Field. And I liked his description of the Akashic field because he gave it an importance that took him. He considered both the metaphysical aspect of the Akashic field, and he also looked at the scientific aspect of what he was saying. So I like the idea of quantum field, morphic field, because they're all the same. So the Akashic field was an all way of communicating or saying something nowadays we call the quantum field, or the morphic field, which is what Rupert Sheldrake talks about when he develops the theory of the 101st monkey, which I don't know if you know about. Yes? Yes. You know, you look familiar, but I don't know. No. Okay. But we know there are reflections of myself in every part of the world, so that might be one of them. Anyway, I used the word morphic because he used it, and do you know that theory, the 101st monkey? Do you all know it? No. Nobody don't know it. Okay. So there was a study done in an island in Japan. They were observing some monkeys, and they observed a young monkey, a female monkey, go to the water. Before eating her food, she would take the fruit from the tree or the bush and wash it in the ocean and then eat it. The younger monkeys started to observe that and copied that, and after a certain time, about a month or so, everybody in the island, including the older monkeys, were doing the same thing. 75 kilometers away from that island, there was another island where a similar study was being conducted. And they observed that suddenly the monkeys over there were doing the same thing that was being done in this island. So Rupert Sheldrake concluded that there was a unified field of communication and information that involves everything. He called it a unified field. Theosophists will say it is the Akashic field, and now with quantum physics, we're talking about the same thing. It's a unified field of information that is continuously communicating everything. And when you talk about the Akashic field, you say, well, it is the field of information, it's the etheric field onto which all the impressions of the soul are imprinted from the beginning, from the time of your separation until the time that you return back to your source. I talk a lot with my hands. That's because I live in Argentina. Okay. And also because that way I make sure you don't fall asleep. So, he says then that if the 101st monkey is what is needed to create an experience that is then multiplied 1,000,000 times. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's 101 square, is that how you say it? 101
square.
So that means that this applies to all of us. We're all looking for some way of getting out of here, right? In whatever way we can. By that I mean not by dying, but by becoming alive. And by that I mean by healing our minds completely. So I called it morphic for that reason, and genetic because I'm looking at the individual morphic field of the person. I'm not doing that alone. I'm doing that with you because when we have a session, you bring questions or subjects that you want to work on, and they can be of any nature, spiritual, personal, it doesn't really matter. If there's something that we have to look at that comes from your ancestry that has not been healed, then we look at it to heal it in your mind. When the healing takes place in your mind, then there is a new space for creation. Suddenly there's a space of your mind that is empty, and it is a space into which you can allow new information to come in to continue your healing. So I called it Morphogenetic Field Healing Therapy because I knew this for a long time, but I couldn't quite get the name. And I wanted to use a different name than just an Akashic Record Consultation, because my consultations were not just an Akashic Record Consultation where you came with questions and I gave you answers. My consultations became therapeutic to the point of having complete healings, including physical healings. I've had people that had physical ailments that resolved their physical ailment. Although that's not my love. I love to heal the psychological aspect of your minds because of my mind, although you're a reflection of me. So psychological aspects of my own mind, so that I can be completely free to the truth, and to life itself. So I've been doing this since 2006 in this way consistently. I've done it this way because, and I've developed other things that happened before that, along with my consultation, which started before I did this. I just did healing. That's what I had learned: magnified healing, psychic surgery, blah blah blah. And one day I was sitting and I was doing a healing for a person, and I began feeling a sound, and it was in my chest, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this sound? And so I told the guy, look, I'm sorry, but close your eyes, I'm very embarrassed, but I have to make this sound. And the sound came as just a tone, right? And I've heard about toning, but I didn't learn this anywhere, and this just comes out sometimes, not always. And the tones seem to realign some part of the mind of a person that allows that person to be even more open to what needs to be done during that sitting. When we look at the ancestry, what I am led to do is to follow a specific line, the one that is prevailing in your discomfort. So sometimes somebody says, I'm so angry at my mother, blah, 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 but I go towards the father, because that's really what we have to look at in order for you to be healed. I don't decide it. This is decided by you. Not by you telling me what to do, but by our joining, because this healing takes place when we join in one mind. And when Spirit can take our thoughts away from the 3D dimension, third dimension, and we can lift our minds to a higher state of consciousness where we can really come to that healing. If we are very mental, which I've experienced in these past days, the sounds will help that person break away from their usual way of using their mind. We are all very mental, I'm included. But I've learned to trust, and I've learned to have faith in something that is greater than my personality or my ego, and I have learned to trust what Spirit leads me to look at when we need to go to that healing. At the same time, and this is where the Course in Miracles comes in, I have also learned, I don't know how many of you have studied the Course or know anything about it. 1, 2, wow, not too many. 3, well, 3. Wow, you don't know anything about the Course. Wow, yes. Anyone else? Anyone else? All right, so the Course of Miracles taught me that the healing is always in my mind. There's no healing of the physical body per se. I can be sick, but my sickness didn't start. My emotional discomfort and my physical discomfort did not start with just my body. The Course of Miracles tells me that I am only mind and spirit, and that a part of my mind believes that is the body, and that the Course calls the ego. So I have learned that when my ego still, this is an example, I had the grace of meeting quite a number of people that are part of a school in Wisconsin. There are people that are awake, and they teach A Course in Miracles. And one time I was called by one of them to give them a consultation. And I was like, how am I going to give a consultation if you're awake? But it was very interesting to find out that although you might be awake, there is still something that is pulling you back here. There's still something that is telling you that this reality is right, is the truth. That am I making myself understood? Okay, and so, of course, if your mind is already awake when you do the session, like it happened with a couple of the people that I saw there, in half an hour you get everything done because you understand that those things that were going on there were simply a projection of the things that you had not healed still. So my work allows you to look at that part of the mind that is still insisting in being the poor one, the victim, the one that is the victim of anything. It can be your parent, it can be your illness, it can be your mental state. When we began talking about my coming here with my cousin, I told her that I felt that in this country there was a lot of need for help in an area that I see is a consistent area, and it's the area of people that have had to go to war over and over and over again. Your grandparent went to the First World War, and then your great-grandparent, and then your grandparent went to the second one, and then you went to Korea, and then so we have a mindset that has not allowed us to forgive that. I have spoken to people that have been, I have spoken to their children, and they have told me that their parents or his father never talked about when he was at war. And so when this is something else to know, when we suppress the pain, the devastation that it meant for us to have to go out there to defend the country or whatever we needed to do, and what we had to do was to kill somebody else, although at the time that seemed right because we were doing that for the country and the people that we loved and we wanted to protect them and all of that. There's a part of us that is lost. Not lost because it cannot be recovered, lost because it's too devastating. And so with this work we can also look at that and come into a time of forgiveness. We can look at what happened back there, and we can come to a reconciling ourselves with that experience, because we went through that experience perhaps to learn forgiveness, which is what the Course of Miracles tells me. It tells me that the only place where I can really become whole is when I forgive every experience that I have had and every experience that anybody around me has had. It's not just forgiving the stuff that is in my own mind, but the things that I see out there. Because I am responsible for what I see, I am responsible for my feelings, I am responsible for the things that happen to me. No, what do you mean, things that happen to me? It's not my fault that something so severe as being raped happened to me. It's somebody else's fault that that happened to me. Yet if I take it from a higher perspective, I'll say any experience that I'm having in this level is an experience that I have asked for because there was a purpose for that experience. I'm not talking about the ego asking for the experience. Spirit brought me to that experience so that I could forgive it, release it, and not to not see it anymore anywhere, not just in my life, but in other people's lives. Well, to think this way takes a lot of courage, because when you think about what I'm saying, and you begin thinking that perhaps I have to forgive everything that went on in the past, because the past is no longer here. And if I keep retaining the past, what I will do is I will never get out of here. My mind will never be completely healed. And I will continue having the experiences that I did not want to have anymore. The suffering, the pain, illness, sickness, and death. We are expected, because we are, the truth of who we are is wholeness. The truth of who we are is completeness. But we're not living that experience. I don't know if any one of you is already in total, feeling that way. Joyful every day, peaceful every day. Please raise your hand. Okay, so the reason why I decided to do my work the way I'm doing it is because with the Course of Miracles, I had certain realizations. I realized that even doing this, even doing this might not be enough. That it is required that you use your will to take in whatever it is that we can do to let you release the past of your thoughts and your past experiences with your parents and your grandparents, etc. But you must also apply yourself to not wanting to repeat the same old story. Your own willingness will allow you to do that. When you become completely committed to not wanting to repeat the same old story, suffering, pain, illness, sickness, and death, it's a repetition in your mind of an old story. You've been doing this forever. You've been doing this since you decided to come and experience the 3D or whatever dimension you think you're in right now. It doesn't really matter, okay? So in order for us to let go of all of that, we have to become passionate about wanting to awaken. What I can offer you, it's one step that leads you closer to that awakening. Because when we let go of the first primary images and feelings, which are the primary feelings that we had as children, when we can say, wow, now I feel like I've grown up, I don't have to give anything back to my parents and my great-grandparents, because I now know that I did all of that for years and I'm ready to go forward and do something different, something that will allow me to feel my completeness, to feel my wholeness, to feel my peacefulness. Because we are all meant to feel the peace that passes, I don't know if I'm saying that right, passeth all understanding. We are meant to live that. But the only way we can do that is if we're willing to really go forward and go one step ahead of what we've done so far. Because we've done things that have alleviated us a little bit from our pain. You know, how many of you are healers here? Yes. Okay. So you know that, what do you do?
I teach yoga.
You teach yoga.
Mm-hmm. Radiant heart.
Radiant?
Heart.
Heart.
Quantum healing.
And what else?
Massage.
And who else? Reiki. Reiki. And what else?
Massage.
Massage. And what else? What do you do?
Not yet.
Not
I
yet.
want to be a master. Not yet.
Okay, so we...
Next one.
Different reconnection.
Reconnection. Okay, so we have all learned different things because we all need to go back to the source, you know. We're all wanting to do that. But in order for us to do that, we have to become totally passionate about our awakening, because we've been here time and time after time. That's why I felt I didn't want to go back to past lives to explain anything else to anybody, because I realized there is no need to go there. I can just be here and go right straight to God or to Source or Spirit or whichever way you want to call it, if I decide so. So the work that I do is a fusion of all of the stuff that I've been telling you, and it helps you just take one step forward so that you can stop being who you're not. If I was always my mother's husband, then I probably will have been happy for the rest of my life. If I was always taking care of a parent, then I wasn't taking care of myself. If I was doing it because I felt how sad she felt, because she was under a special circumstance. She was undergoing a special circumstance when I was a little girl. Or before that, her mother, my grandmother, or my great-grandmother. Or if somebody went to war and never was able to undergo any type of healing, and that member of the family is in my family, and I'm his child, I will probably want to do everything for him. I was telling, I forget who, one of the friends here, I think that it was Lisa, that when I went to Spain about 2008, I was completely taken by Bert Hellinger's teachings with the family constellations. I was looking for a book on family constellations, and I found one that is written by a guy whose name is John Payne. You might want to carry that book, because it's interesting to find out what he sees when he does his constellations. And he says that before I read that book, I was listening to the radio a lot. I was staying at a center and they didn't have a TV, and so I wanted to hear what the Spaniards said about things. I wanted to hear the news in Spain, and I kept on hearing, if you have fibromyalgia, please call blah, 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 blah. Oh, and then reports on fibromyalgia. I came from Argentina. I thought, I've never heard about fibromyalgia. What are they talking about? So I read that book written by John Payne, Payne, called Family Constellations. He's English. And he was saying that fibromyalgia was the result of taking on all of the pain of somebody that was to war. You're the son or the daughter of somebody that went to war, never spoke about his pain. And I had a client who was given a disability. She couldn't work. I had her as a client I was in Alicante, Barcelona, and she had told me that was her problem, fibromyalgia. Then I traveled to another town and I met her again, and I went to her and I said to her, I forget, Maria, this is what I found out about fibromyalgia. And she started to cry and she said, yes, my dad was in the Second World War and he was in so much pain, but he never said anything about it. And then a couple of years later, she writes me and she tells me, I have continued doing my healing. I don't have fibromyalgia anymore, but I'm still getting the disability because that is what is allowing me to take all of these healing courses. Okay. So all of our suffering and pain, or all of our physical ailments are a result of the way we think. You know that because you've already read Louise Hay and a whole bunch of people that have written about it. But one thing is to read it, and another thing is to own that information. So, well, now I know that I am responsible. Oh no, that makes me feel guilty. I'm sick. It's somebody's fault. It must be the environment. It must be my mother. It must be my husband who left me. And we're accusing everybody when in truth the one that is suffering from that ailment is me. Then it is time for us to begin looking at why is it that we want to hold onto thoughts that are separating us from others who could be our saviors if we did the work that we need to do. In other words, if I say that I became divorced from this man, and after that I had cancer, which is what I hear a lot from many women, what I'm saying is that it is his fault that I had cancer. Also, this is something that we learn in the Course in Miracles, is that when I get sick, I am attacking myself. There's something that I don't agree, that something about my wholeness that I'm not accepting, and I'm attacking myself, and that's how I become sick. And so, if I can begin seeing that perhaps because of him I went to take reconnection with Sebastian, and what is it that you do? The healing that you do.
Yeah.
Quantum healing?
Yeah.
Quantum healing with her and Reiki with her. Well, that's thanks to this man who I hated, I went the way of my healing. If I can see that, then I can go back and say, thank you, so-and-so, because if it were not for you, I would not have done all that I did to get my healing. My forgiveness will allow my complete healing, but that depends on me. There's no, okay, we say, well, she did all she could, she went through all the healing and the healers, yet she died. Well, so what? Maybe that was part of the path that you chose. If you become responsible for the life that you have completely, and you can say to yourself, I am responsible for everything that I see, everything that I feel, and everything that I think, because I have asked for it. What do you mean? Do you mean that I asked to have cancer? No, you've asked to have an experience, whichever that experience was, to look at something in your mind that you were not forgiving. It is only when we can forgive completely anything that is in our minds, because everything is in our mind, okay? We say, no, it's his fault that I am dying. Well, if you want to look at it that way, you may, because that's the way of the world. You may also choose to see things differently. So the real healing happens, and this is what we do when we begin seeing images that are in our mind that relate to our parents, and we can begin saying healing phrases that will allow us to feel emptier to receive love and give love, with more space in our hearts and our minds to receive what we are, the truth of who we are. Call it God, Spirit, I don't care how you call it, it doesn't matter. To receive the truth of my completeness. Only when I do that, then I can awaken, and we are at a time when awakening is the motto. It should be the leitmotif of your lives. You know, there's no more time. There's how many more reincarnations you want to spend here going over the same old story, right? You want to just get over this whole story and begin feeling the experience of love here, right here, not in, you know, another, well, let's see, it's you want it now, okay? So, as we let go of the energy that we have carried on for our parents out of love, because we love them so much, Hellinger says that we have blind love for our parents. We will do anything for them. Why? Because we want to be loved by them. And many times our parents have given us our lives, but their lives have been complicated before us. So they gave me my life, and they're holding me, they're rocking me, they're singing me a lullaby. But a part of my mind and my being is looking at her mother, who did not rock her, who did not do that for her. And so here I am trying to give you all of my love, but a part of me is looking at her saying, when are you going to give it to me, Mom? Why didn't you give it to me, Mom? You should have given it to me, Mom, because that is the ego. I want what I want. I don't understand that maybe standing behind my mom or my dad, there were her parents or his parents that had also undergone tribulations, hard times, hardship. So we want our parents to be the way we want them to be, and we are angry to be born in that family because we are so different, because we come to Northern Lights. Okay? So the purpose of my work is to help you in your awakening. It is a stepping stone. The rest is your work. It's your decision. The practical part of my work, I do a 2-hour session during which I talk to people, I ask questions, I hear things, I write things down, and I have them visualize certain things. Sometimes in one session I'm able to just move things apart, you know, open up their way so that they can become closer to who they am. And sometimes I need to see a person for another session, or sometimes I have a witness there. Sometimes I will see a person 3 years later, and I can go deeper because that person is ready. It depends on, everybody is different. I don't control that. I just have a session, and then you tell me. Usually I don't see people twice in the same month. I might see them 6 months down the line, a year, 3 years. It doesn't matter. I really don't hold onto them. It's like once the rest of what goes on after a session has to do with how you incorporate it. That's why we record it. We have a recording. We make it. You bring your telephone or something to record it. Or sometimes there are friends that give me a thumb. What are they called? Flash drives, so that I can give to my to my patients, or to my consultants, so that they can bring them home, bring them and listen to what was said. Sometimes when we listen to that over and over again, we begin getting more clicks. We understand more what went on, because when we are taken by the energy of that moment during the session, we're probably taken by those images, and so it takes a while to process. It's not something that happens with your reasoning. Although I do reason with you, because I feel that the mindset here is very mental, and so I've had some sessions here before this lecture with people that are completely open but very mental, that argue a little bit. I don't wanna. So my work involves, I know you, okay? When we come to a session, I know who you are, because I know myself, or you help me learn who I am, okay? So when I come to a session, I am not separate from you, and that's why I can help you. If I were separate from you, then I would think that I am the healer and you're being healed. But this is a process where we are both being healed in a way, because you are an extension, or you're actually a projection of a part of my mind. And every time that I have somebody that sits before me, and we have a session where I can see that, wow, things get really cleared, I thank God, because I feel that that reflection of myself that I put out there, called Louise, called Charlotte, called
Gina,
whichever names, that reflection of myself has been has begun her healing. I do this for me, not for you. I do this work because I love to know that I'm going back to source and that you are the reason of my healing. Okay, so I place myself as a healer out here, but in truth, it is the same. You understand? You come to me for healing, but it's actually, the healing is mutual. It's actually mutual. Well, I think I've said everything I have to say, and I know that Tony had a question, and you might have questions, and I'll be glad to answer anything. Yes.
In the example that you used to the family,
Yes.
you mentioned that the grandparents, there were hostilities from the grandparents. That was not discussed or not brought up, and it was kind of like, oh, well, there's hostilities from the grandparents. Is that because of the assumption of that there's carried on feelings? Because you didn't express any reason why you said it to us.
Right, I didn't say anything in particular, because I just wanted to actually show the order of love, which is
Okay.
that I am born of my fathers and my parents, and I cannot give them back their lives. That is the order of life. And that there is a hierarchy. If she was in the place of my second sister, but when she who was representing me as the first sister moved, she took my place. So there was a period of her life where she felt uncomfortable, because now she was meant to do things that I would have done as the oldest sister. Sometimes the youngest sister does things for all of the other children because she is also given that importance. The mother says, yes, you're the most intelligent one, and you're the more able to do things, so yes, you can do it. And for some reason, when she looks at the rest of the children, although she would like for them to do the same thing, there's something in her that does not allow her to recognize them equally. Perhaps because she's carrying an image of her parents about how people should be, and when she looks at those children, she can't recognize the truth of who they are, but a projection of what she would like them to be. And so she looks at the one, the youngest, who's like the last one, maybe she's number 10, number 12, number 11, or number 3, doesn't matter, but gives her or him all of the power. It's like, now you are going to do it for all of us, because maybe she's projecting on her how she felt about her mother or her father. She sees something in her that she wished her mother did. She could perceive that her mother could have done that but couldn't. And so now she's projecting it on this little girl that resembles in some way what she would have liked to have from her mother. Does that right? Okay. Yes.
So like with the 101st monkey theory,
Yes.
when we're part of a larger group
Yes.
in a family network, and we have, let's say we have 6 siblings,
Yes.
and maybe all of the children are experiencing similar dynamics with their parent or parents. How do you work with that as far as just clearing, we are only responsible for ourselves, but I believe that often we can be affected by the group experience, not just our own individual experience with those particular dynamics.
Yes.
Are there things that we can do as a part of that group for the group?
No.
Or,
The healing starts always with you.
right?
So if you perceive yourself differently in relationship to them, then there will change. You will see the change happen. Sometimes there's a part of our mind that it's stuck on an idea, right? And I'm not answering that question directly, but it has to do with this. So there's a part of me that still doesn't want to let go of that feeling that I have about my mother or my father. Okay? Children always reflect the mindset of their parents. So you have a family of 6 children, and 5 are against 1. All of them are angry with this 1 out of the 6. Or 3 are against the other 3 or 2 or whatever. Okay, what the children do is what I explained before. If my father left, now I'm going to take his place. Although I would love to go towards my dad, I won't, because I'm afraid that if I do that, she will feel left out. She will not be considered. And so I don't dare go towards the love that my father is also giving me. It doesn't really matter. The interesting thing about this is that it doesn't matter what your parents did. The most important thing about your parents is that they gave you your life. If it were not for them, you would not be here. It does not matter that your experience after your birth was not a good experience. Your parents were placed there so that you could learn what you came to learn. And you came to learn the lesson that you wanted to learn. Nobody gave you a kick in the butt and, made you come, oh yeah, from heaven down to earth, oh, what is this? I didn't want to be born in this family, in this country, speaking this language. I don't like any of this. Well, that's a perception of the part of the mind that is separated from wholeness, which we call the ego. So when we begin this healing, I'm not concerned about what is going to happen with the sisters or the siblings. I'm only concerned about what is going to happen to you, because what you are going to do when you heal that part of your mind that is concerned about that, you're concerned because you have a great concern, most likely, for your mother, who's very concerned. Or maybe she wasn't as concerned, and so you're concerned for them because she wasn't as concerned. You're taking over her role, right? And so your life is not a happy life because you're not living the life of the daughter. See, in order to be a woman or a man, I have to have forgiven, and I have to have seen what was my relationship like with my parents. Because we all want to go to God, but on this level, God is a father. Who was the mother before? Her. And a mother. At this level, they are God.
Right.
They are my source. So we all want to go to God or to Spirit, or however you want to say it, but we all have conflicts. Most people have conflicts, I'm not going to say all, with our source here. When that is healed, when that is united inside me, and I go, wow, in my heart, I'm giving those two aspects of who I am their rightful place, then I become a woman or a man. And then I can have a good relationship with a man, or a man with a woman, or with whoever I put before me as my counterpart, so that I can keep on doing the work that I was meant to do. It doesn't mean that you don't have to be a man and a woman. It doesn't matter. The image that I put outside is what I have chosen, so that I can see what parts of me I have not healed. But within my own family, the closest things that I have, and where I have my primary feelings obscured, is it's in that relationship with my parents, my first relationship. I was born out of my mother's womb, and my father gave birth to my life as well as my mother. If I don't have respect for those two images within me, then I will continue having suffering and pain. And the awakening process is going to take much longer. Or you may become Edgar Tolle and be instantly awakened. I pray for that. But if not, this is a way, and when we learn that, then we have freedom. Because I no longer feel guilty. Now, my mother is 81. I left her in Argentina. She had a birthday, May 1st, the same day I had my birthday. And I said to her, I love you, but I have to go up north to visit my cousin and do some stuff there. And my mom said, I love you. I want you to be happy and go. In the past, actually it's never been like that with my mother, but with other people it would have been, how could you leave me? I'm 81 and something could happen to me, so I don't have to feed into that and feel guilty, because the problem is, as a child, I feel guilty because my parents gave me my life and I don't know how to return it, give it back. How can I make that even? I can't. I either accept that they are my source and I honor them and I give them the rightful place in my heart, or I keep on suffering forever until I die, until I leave this dream through death. Now, the thing is, you don't want to die to have to come back and do it all over again. You want to heal everything that needs to be healed in order for you to continue. If your awakening is still a process, it's not like Edgar Tolle that, hey, he just woke up and said, hey, my God, who's thinking those thoughts? Hey, who am I? I don't know, who am I, right? Okay, we might still have to go through that process of realizing that I don't need to suffer anymore. I don't need to be in pain. I don't need to project my anger and my fear onto the world out there. That's what the Course in Miracles teaches you. I don't have to project anything out there because I know that I am responsible for the world that I see. Lesson number 1. Everything I see doesn't mean anything. What? What do you mean? That's my son walking by. Yeah, to you it means that he's your son and you think that he's just that. Though he might be much more than that, you're just giving him that. You're just limiting what you see with your thoughts. So the awakening process requires that we change our minds completely. It's like a 360-degree turn in your mind where you no longer need to retain yourself with all the stuff that you put out there to be either the victim, right? Because of the US government and because of the conspiracy theories and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, if you like that because it keeps your mind busy, go ahead. But my suggestion, which is the work that I try to do with myself and that I try to do with you or whoever is working with me, is to empty out that part of my mind that is still feeling like a victim or like the culprit, the victimary, the guilty one. We don't want to be one or the other. We want to come to a complete healing in our minds. So we are at a time when everybody around us, you read all of the books that we have now are about our awakening. So it is time that we take notice of this, because we don't need to be in this state of mind anymore. We really can leave this state of mind and become whole and complete. Although there is the fear that the ego has. What is it? What's going to happen to me? I'm going to lose my identity, right? There's a book written by Joe Dispenza that I bought here. I forget. Something like breaking your own identification of yourself, right?
Oh, the habit of breaking
Being yourself, breaking the habit of being yourself. Yes, I don't want to be that old self, the self that is always complaining and that always is fighting against everything and the world is against me. Because I know, this is my experience as Gabriela, I know that that is not true. That I can, when Gina said, oh, it's so nice, it would be so nice to travel. What's stopping you? I'm afraid because maybe I won't get the money, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's a fear that I have to go through every time, but also I know that that is my own obstacle. Nothing will detain me from doing absolutely anything that I'm meant to do, if it is for my own good. All I have to do is not to establish a fabrication of something that I want. You want a bigger car, you want to have a greater house, you want to have money to travel. Well, nobody's stopping you, except my own mind. I have fabricated my limitations. I have placed myself in this world to see how everything is born and dies, right? You go, the island of Japan disappeared, half of it disappeared. How come? There was a tsunami that made it disappear. So, now we're all concerned it might happen to us. Luckily, it didn't happen to us. It happened somewhere remote in some other area of the world. That is not going to happen to me because, this is a safe place to be. That's an idea that we all have, right? Don't we? We moved to Colorado because it's a much nicer place than, I don't know, New York City, because you have the fresh air and mountains, and people here are like hit, like cool. Come and talk about spirituality. Wow, we're all spiritual, right? Right. Of course you're spiritual. What else could you be? What else could you be but spiritual? So in order for us to have a life of fulfillment, and that means to really let go of my identity, my identification with what I think I am, right? I'm married to so-and-so, and I have 4 children or 2 children, and I live here, and I came from that country, and I have to disappear. In my mind, there's a part of me that has to forgive everything that is the past, so that something new can come through. And so what I will be something completely different. Well, what I will feel, what I will extend is love. I will recognize that is what I am, love. I am light, I am love. Oh yeah, right, sure. I've read it in many books. Well, guys, it is an experience. You can have that experience, but you have to decide, what is it that you want to do? You want to continue living with your hate? Oh, I hate my father because he did this, that to me and my mother, and I saw how he hit my mother. Yes, that was terrible. I understand it was devastating for you as a child. It wasn't what you would have liked to see. Yet it happened and it was your experience. And it was the experience that gave you the opportunity to begin seeking something different. So that you didn't have to stay just with that image. And when the images are forgiven, then there's nothing. I can't look to the past and say it's because of them, because I already forgave that. Now I can be in the present. So this is about being in the present. The here and the now is a possibility. A completely awakened mind knows it. You look at Eckhart Tolle, I see him via YouTube. You know, I've been meaning to see him personally, but I never get to do that because I either come here or somewhere else. But simply by looking at him and just feeling his words, feel with my heart. I don't have to think about his words. I feel with this chakra, which is this is who you are. This is the love that you are. So if I can feel what he says, even though there are people in Argentina that don't understand English, it's been translated. But I've had the experience of my friends just closing their eyes and just hearing the voice. And that voice was soothing. It was calming. It was healing. Because he's not there to appear as an important person telling you what to do. He simply knows the truth. He knows who he is. And so for us to awaken, we also have to get to that point. We have to get to the point where we can forgive absolutely everything that has happened to us so that we can be who we are and extend that light, the light and the love that we are to everything and everywhere, always, any situation. Whatever it is that I see on TV, I can convert in my mind. I don't have to go, oh my God, there's war again in, what was the last country that was in war now? Ukraine. Oh, the Russians and the Ukrainians, and oh my God, now we're going to have to go back to helping them out. Somebody's going to have to help them. We're going to be back in a war again. No, we can convert our minds, asking for help to see things differently, because we all have what we are. The truth of the divinity of who we are can be always called upon to ask for us to see things differently. Father, Holy Spirit, divinity, I don't care how you call it, help me see this differently. Help me forgive in my mind the fact that what I am seeing is an attack. I said before, an ailment, an illness is an attack on myself. I'm attacking myself because I feel either guilty or hateful or have some very negative feeling about myself. Okay, so what do? Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. Let's beat myself up a little bit until I get really sick. And now I'm ready to be at that borderline where I may die or I may not, right? And I start treatments and I do all sorts of things. I don't need to get to that point if I begin using the power of forgiveness, which is not of Gabriela Hernandez. No, it's just it's I don't know how to say it. It's a grace. It's something that we can all appeal to if we ask our divinity, our higher self, to help us see what we see out there differently. We can change our minds about what we see, and we begin seeing with love, right? We won't feel that attacked anymore. Perhaps we'll be able to help in another way. Perhaps we'll have different suggestions. We won't get together, reconvene one more time to see how and when are we going to go back to war? Because we are at war every day. I don't need to magnify it and have a huge war happening out there, affecting them. I'm here, but I'm affected as well. No, it's affecting me too. I don't need to magnify my own state of war. I can heal my state of war by asking for help to see things differently. And war starts when you're born. Because it's like you fell into this reality and you go, wow, this is so dense. You know, I want to get out of here. I'm a year old. It's too long. I gotta go. This is too heavy for me, right? And then you have what do they call it? I don't know in English. When you have a sudden death, right? The kid he disappears. He goes back to where he came from. Just this is too heavy. I don't need this, right? Others, I include myself, have chosen a different task. We chose to be in the matrix, but we also chose to remember that we are not from the matrix. We all want to go back to Zion. I actually, I don't like Zion. I like to, that Zion of the movie. I want to go back to where I'm real. And I can only go back to being who I'm truly am if I begin forgiving the basics. If you don't forgive, yeah, right, yeah. I've done a lot of forgiveness work, and I have people that sit in front of me, and I'm like, oh my God, this is not over, because there's a part of that mind that is still like wanting to attack someone out there that has not been forgiven. Oh yeah, no, I forgave my dad and my mom. Oh God, when they sit in front of me and they tell me everything is okay with their dad and mom, but they don't have a job, they lost their neighborhood, their boyfriend. I know that they are lying to themselves. We do a lot of mental things, but to forgive is an experience. It's not a mental exercise that we do. I'm going to forgive you, I'm going to forgive you, I'm going to forgive you, I'm going to forgive you. I don't know if I'm going to forgive you. Okay? What we need to do is to get to the experience of forgiveness. I don't make any great claims. I can only say that what I try to do with my work is to try to bring you to that point where you can really begin, seeing things in a different way, and you can have a greater openness to what's available to you. It's like we suffer from lack because we think that what we have is not enough, or we will not have enough, and we are provided, always. We are always provided. Like, I want to travel. I like this talk I had with Gabriela, and hey, I'd like to go to Argentina. Okay, my doors are open. You want to come and visit? Just come on over. Why not? Why not? The possibilities are there. It is up to you. You are the ones that can make those possibilities available. But you have to remember that in order for you to have an experience of love, you have to really surrender. And when we forgive the beginning, the experiences of love begin to happen. We no longer need to always keep repeating the same experience. And if there's an experience that didn't change yet, it's because in my own mind I have not allowed the experience to change. Got it? There's a part of me that still wants to hold on to something, a grudge from the past, because that is my way of feeling like a baby. If I hate my parents, then I can still have them with me, although they died, or I don't see them anymore. But if I can if I can realize that what I'm experiencing is simply a thought that has kept me hanging on to the past, and if I can allow that to be healed, then you have no more excuses. There's when somebody comes and you get angry at them, you go, wow, what part of me came at me today that I still have not healed, that is me? Do you understand what I'm saying? The other as a reflection of yourself. Well, have I spoken English correctly today? Because it's like a whole lecture in English. After 25 years of speaking Spanish only, it's like, thank you. Thank you. Anyway, are there any more questions? Is there something else that I can do for you? Yes.
So, could you relate some of this to our potential for healing with our children?
Yes, obviously. Right. Okay, so somebody that I gave a consultation to told me that she gave and gave and gave, and she did not get enough retribution. She didn't get the retribution she expected. And that she had a daughter that asked and asked and asked of her. That is the situation, because here I am trying to help my children, but there's so much I can do for them. When you begin realizing that I've given so much to everybody and I did not get retribution, because I wasn't actually giving to those people out there, but to my mother or my father, whoever I felt was lacking affection, love, money. When I realized that I've been doing all of that for her, then I can stand before my children and say, I have given you your life. I will continue giving you things, because parents do that, right? We have an extension of ourselves, we want to always take care of our children. But once we realize, I don't have to do it for her anymore, because what I did for her, I did out of love as a little child does, not as a woman giving things to her mother. My mother says, you know, I don't want to drive from, because I live in Cordoba, and that's like 900 kilometers or 500 miles away from Buenos Aires. My mom is 81. She has a car, she still drives, but she doesn't want to drive